Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
Attention all campers.
The All-American Spook Show welcomes you to enroll in Camp Spook Show this summer. We have activities for all ages, including archery, canoeing, swimming, and
Running for your lives.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the All-American Spook Show podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Donnie.
Hey.
Will.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoke.
What's up?
Smoke, right now you're recording this from, where are you at? Are you in Pennsylvania, New Jersey? Where are you at?
I'm in the woods in South Jersey right now.
So you're not too awfully far from where they filmed The Burning.
That's true. Coincidentally enough, yes. So.
They actually filmed the movie at William H. Pouch Scout Camp in Staten Island, New York. So you're still a good ways away, but you're a lot closer where you are now than we are, or you would be at your house. So
That's true. That's very true.
But you still got to watch out for Cropsy. He might be out there somewhere. So keep your eyes peeled.
But anyway, at least a coyote.
Yeah. Those Jersey Coyotes. Hell, I don't know. They might be a thing. Who fucking knows? Anyway, so yeah, we're here to talk about. This was my choice here for our every 2 weeks we make a choice deal we have going on, our little rotation. This was my choice, and I chose The Burning from 1981. Obviously, it sticks with the Camp Spook Show theme. So Camp Spook Show keeps rolling on through the month of August. But before we dive deep into this one, and before I toss to the trailer, I'll throw out some of the usual information. You can contact us at allamericanspookshow@gmail.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Slasher app, all that stuff. All the links are down the show notes there. You'll see the link tree linked. We have our YouTube page where every Tuesday. Nothing's on there on Tuesdays, I don't think. But on Wednesdays, every Wednesday night, we do Deadline Horror News Live at 9 p.m. East, where we go through the latest horror headlines and everything like that. All kinds of fun to be had every Wednesday night over on our YouTube channel. Of course, we have our TeePublic page where you can get logoed merchandise, other cool designs, and our Patreon, patreon.com/AA Spook Show, where you get bonus episodes such as Crapsterpiece Theater. Coming up this month, you've got Ernest Goes to Camp. So if you like that for some reason, that's the kind of thing that you like, and it'll be waiting for you over there at patreon.com/AA Spook Show. And there's a poll right now that's up through the month of June 30th at 11:59 p.m. for the month for what we will watch on Crapsterpiece Theater in July. Those are Special Dead, Rim of the World, Camp Blood, and Heavyweights. Those are our four choices, the four distinct turds that are laid out before you right now. So help us pick which three we're going to flush, and then the one that's just going to stick around and we have to talk about next week, or next month, I should say. But that's not the only thing we have on Patreon. We've got every Tuesday so that is the thing we do on Tuesdays. But it's not on YouTube. It's over on patreon.com. We do video minisodes, including Library of the Professor. We do Spook Show rewinds, all kinds of cool stuff. So go check out patreon.com/AA Spook Show. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and toss to the trailer for The Burning.
This summer, if you're planning to go camping, don't. If you're looking forward to midnight swims, don't.
Sneak on back to the campsite. Get some matches. Build us a hot fire. Don't be long.
And if you're thinking about being with someone where no one can see you, don't. Because this summer, a legend of terror isn't just a campfire story anymore.
They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames. Burned alive, cried out, "I will return! I will have my revenge!" He lives. focus on whatever he can catch. Right now, he's out there, watching, waiting.
Who's there?
What happened one summer 5 years ago is about to happen again, and again, and again. The Burning.
All right, so there's the trailer for The Burning. So I guess we'll go through some of the background information. Now, this one actually had a few alternate titles that I could find. It's also known as The Cropsy Maniac. That was actually the working title of this movie. There was a U.S. reissue of the movie just called Cropsy. And then in France, it was called Carnage. It was released May 8th, 1981 by Cropsy Venture, Miramax Films, distributed by Filmways Pictures. Rated R, of course. Total runtime of 1 hour, 31 minutes. It was filmed August 21st through September 29th, 1980, like I mentioned earlier, at William H. Pouch Scout Camp in Staten Island, New York, which I looked it up. That camp is still open. It's still an active camp there in Staten Island. The film was made for a budget of $1.5 million. That seems like a lot for this movie, really, to be honest with you. But the U.S. Canadian gross was only $707,000. So they didn't even make half their money back, roughly, on this. At least as far as any kind of box office goes. This movie was also included in the UK Video Nasty, mostly basically just for the raft scene. Here's where it gets juicy. This movie, or the I guess you could say the plot, was created by Harvey Weinstein.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, this is small name that you may or may not have heard of that was convicted for being a sex offender and wanting to do many horrible things to people over a lengthy career in Hollywood. Now he was a big time producer all through the 80s, 90s, 2000s until finally, nasty motherfucker. Really, I mean, we're not going to go too far down the old Weinstein hallway there, but yeah, that was, it's interesting, the connections here, because basically this is the movie that started his career. And I saw something too that, like, they might even go so far as to trace his history of, being kind of a, I guess, maybe not outright sex offender, but like just kind of a sexual predator or whatever, all the way back to this movie. Apparently he was doing some questionable shit to a couple of the ladies, even on this movie. So it started all the way at the beginning for him, possibly.
Dang.
Which, is fucking crazy, but that's the connections that you find here. But basically,
I'm guessing if all the lines from the blonde-headed guy came straight from Weinstein.
Yeah, I started thinking about that somewhere through. I was like, at some point, and I put it in my notes when I was watching the movie. I was like, man, there's a few too many creeps around this fucking camp. Everybody's just fucking skeevy and pervy. And then I was like, wait a minute, Harvey Weinstein. It's all making sense.
Why?
Yeah, he wrote like a treatment for like a 5-page treatment for the movie that ended up becoming, this is what it turned into. But it was actually based on an original story by Harvey Weinstein, Tony Maylam, who is the guy that ended up directing it, and Brad Gray. Now, Brad Gray, he was, I think he might even have went on to run Paramount at one point or another. So, like, these are some heavy hitters eventually. Harvey Weinstein, Brad Gray, even Bob Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein's brother, he was one of the screenwriters. So, like, it's original story by Tony Maylam, Harvey Weinstein, Brad Gray, but the screenplay was written by Peter Lawrence, who went on to do a ton of cartoons, like worked on Thundercats back in the 80s, Silverhawks, a lot of the big cartoon, success stories, I should say, of the late 80s, early 90s. And it was also one of the screenwriters, like I said, Harvey Weinstein's brother, Bob Weinstein, who also went on to co-found Miramax with his brother Harvey, and he was also the founder of Dimension Films. So like I said, The Burning, as far as just big heavy hitters in Hollywood, this is pretty fucking big. This is where it started for them. They took, I guess you could say success. I mean, financially it wasn't a success, but it was enough to where like they kind of got in. This was their way in, and then they just took off and ran from there. But I thought that was just crazy. But like I said, it was directed by Tony Malum, who he's mostly really like a documentarian. He directed The Riddle of the Sands in 1979, so that was right before this. A Rutger Hauer movie in 1992 called Split Second. He directed that. A number of other films.
Tom Savini turned down Friday the 13th Part 2 to do The Burning, which we'll get more into to him a little later.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a number of times about Tom Savini, and we did, especially when we did the first Friday the 13th, and a couple other things that we've done here with him. But yeah, like he's one of those dudes that we most certainly need to do like a Spook Show spotlight on at some point.
Oh yeah, totally.
This is yet another example of his work. Although I wouldn't say this was as good of a Tom Savini showcase as, say, Friday the 13th or a handful of other films that came around this time, Dawn of the Dead, stuff like that. Like you see better examples of his work with those than this one, right, Smoke?
Yeah, and it's probably mainly that raft scene where he really gets to shine. I wonder how many Savini movies popped on the Video Nasty UK list back in the day.
Probably a lot.
Probably so.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that he was so good at it, and they were so great about showcasing his work, up at least until the part where they started cracking down on, slasher movies in the later 80s. By that time, he's kind of moving on. But yeah, up to that point, I'm sure there's been more than a handful.
You kind of go along with the whole thing of it not being his best work. It sounds like he would probably agree with that, too, because he wasn't happy with the Cropsey burn makeup because he only got 3 days to kind of come up with it.
Yeah, like that doesn't seem... that's definitely not a good example of his, like, you're thinking Tom Savini did this, man, this guy's going to look gruesome, but like, although
he didn't really have
it looks
any
pretty
time.
bad, it's like, yeah, and that explains it, really, it's as simple as that. If he'd had more time, I'm sure it would have been pretty gruesome.
So worth noting here, maybe too, is not related to this movie, but there is a document, it's Cropsey, or at least it's Cropsey, maybe some other subtitle to it, where it's, they mentioned this movie, but it's a documentary about the whole folklore surrounding the Cropsey, the real Cropsey, or who they think he might have been, or various movies that have used the character,
But apparently that movie, or that documentary, doesn't mention this movie at all. It never references The Burning, which you think they would at least mention it. Yeah, you would think they would at least mention it in passing. Like, oh yeah, by the way, there was this slasher movie, and that came out that used the name or whatever.
That's like strange too, because this is the first movie, and probably hasn't been too many other movies that use the Cropsey character. But you would think they would have mentioned it for that they. I doubt that there's any way that anybody involved in that movie could have not known about it. I mean, with however many people were making that movie, so
yeah,
weird thing that they didn't mention it at all. Then,
but this movie stars Brian Matthews as Todd, Lee Ayres as Michelle, Brian Backer as Alfred, Larry Joshua as Glazer. Now, it's mostly noted, though, probably, beyond just, for being a classic slasher, as the first movie roles for Jason Alexander and Holly Hunter. Now, Jason Alexander actually plays a pretty big role in the movie, but Holly Hunter's just, camper number 4 over on. Yeah. I don't even know if she had a speaking role. It was very brief. She
just showed her mug.
She plays Sophie in the movie, but like I said, Jason Alexander, he plays a fairly big part. Ned Eisenberg is Eddie, Carrot Glenn is Sally, Karen Houlihan is Karen, Fisher Stevens is Woodstock, and Lou David is Cropsey. Now, I think there were, I know the director, Tony Malum, he played the role of Cropsey on the raft scene. So, and apparently, I think there was a couple other guys that played that role too because of the way it looked on camera.
Savini swung the axe at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I think there was one of the parts where it was Savini's legs. It might even have been towards the end. But yeah, as far as in the credits, it's Lou David as Cropsey, which he would be known for. Obviously, The Exterminator from 1980, and The Last Dragon as the headline killer in The Last Dragon. So. Yeah,
which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, that's a cult. Probably that's a cult corner pick. If I've never
totally.
Yeah, that might have been. That might even have been one of the movies that we brought up when we're like, "What are we going to do on Cult Corner?" Last Dragon was probably mentioned in our conversation.
Yeah.
All right, so as per usual, I'll go over to old IMDb and look up their plot summaries to see what comes up. Now we've got a few here. We've got the generic one. It reads, a former summer camp caretaker, horribly burned from a prank gone wrong, lurks around an upstate New York summer camp, bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. Then we've got one here. It's brief as well. Put up by Umberto Amador. A janitor at a summer camp is accidentally burned severely from a prank. Years later, he is released from an institute and returns to the camp with a pair of hedge clippers to take revenge on the campers. This one's a little better. Posted by Anonymous. It literally says Anonymous. Cropsey, an alcoholic. I don't remember them like firmly establishing that, but whatever. Yeah. Cropsey, an alcoholic, sadistic caretaker for the summer camp called Camp Blackfoot, is pranked by... What the fuck? I swear IMDb is going to be the death of me with some of the way these people phrase these things. It says prank-ed. Pranked. Who spells pranked that way?
Pranked.
Pranked by a group of camp-going boys who felt it was necessary to get him back. The prank goes wrong and Cropsey is left in a hospital for 5 years. Yet to no avail, Cropsey is left to go back out into the world again, but this time, he is a changed individual inside and outside. Cropsey, back in society again for the first time in 5 years, which I don't know why you're repeating that again, feels more than obligated to pay a visit to some individuals at a place called Camp Stonewater, just across the way from his old stomping grounds. 42 dots.
42 dots.
Yeah, there's literally like a shit ton of dots. Not just 3. All right, one more. This was posted by Claudio Carvola from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So I'm sure this might be better English than the guy that whoever typed out Anonymous. One night, 5 campers of the Camp Blackfoot decide to play a prank on the mean caretaker Cropsey. However, the joke goes wrong and Cropsey is totally burned. 5 years later, he is discharged from the hospital, deformed like a monster, and immediately after he kills a prostitute using a pair of scissors. Then he heads to the Camp Stonewater and begins a crime spree. I don't know, I wouldn't call that a crime spree. I don't know, however you want to phrase it. Killing counselors.
Killing?
Yeah, I mean, crime spree, I'm thinking more like, I'm going to steal your money kind of thing. Like, no, he's just killing motherfuckers.
He knocked over a few banks, killed a few campers.
Hell, he might as well have. I mean, he gets out of the hospital and goes straight to kill a hooker, so who knows?
That might
what did the hooker have to do with the story?
You never know. Maybe he was burned over more parts of his body than we realized, and he was just sexually frustrated.
Killing counselors and campers. Will Cropsey be stopped? So yeah, that's probably enough. I mean, they're all kind of saying the same thing, really. Like, prank gone wrong, dude comes back to get revenge. And it's as simple as that. So really, my first question is, how the hell do they think that prank would end? Now, where did this skull? It looked like a real, corpse skull. Like, I'm assuming that it's not. So how did they recreate such a great looking skull that they put there? And then they put candles in the eyes for some reason. He's like, huh? And it falls and fucking blows up and catches him on fire.
Yeah.
I mean,
wasn't there a gas can like right beside it too?
Maybe. I mean, he was the caretaker.
Was it a gas can or was that the alcohol? Is that how they got that he was an alcoholic?
Maybe there was more,
maybe so.
Maybe there was more going on in that room than I was, reading into. I'm just like, hey, it's a fucking skull that falls over and then instantly catches them on fire. But like, there's a lot there. It seems like if you do a prank to somebody like that, you're like, oh fuck, this went wrong bad. Let's help him. No, they just stand back and watch him burn. You think they'd at least like, fuck, get down, man, get down. And then be apologetic. No, they just let his ass burn and then I guess never really apologize for it or whatever. They just hightail it. But yeah, really, how did they think that would end? Like, what was the prank? Like, haha, we got him. We just scared the shit out of him.
And then they just said, well, let's get out of here.
Well, that ended poorly. All right, well, I want to watch for supper tomorrow night.
I don't know, but I'm tired. I'm going to sleep.
So he goes to the hospital, and he's there for 5 years. Like, that seems like a really long amount of time. Yeah,
that's a little excessive. Like, what kind of insurance does Cropsey have?
Apparently, he's got really good shit. He was able to get burn care for 5 years, and then
he opted in.
You would think this guy would be like, he's been in the hospital for 5 years. This will be the one the doctors would like, we have to prove that, we can do, we're successful at what we do. We're the best at what we do. Instead, they're just like 5 years. Well, we've done all we can. See ya. They just wheel them to the door and make them walk away.
Yeah.
And what's the first thing you do when you've been in the hospital for 5 years? Get a hooker.
Get a hooker.
But not just get a hooker, just kill her for no reason.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
she falsely advertised, and that's the repercussion. I guess
You're right. I guess we didn't see the flyer where it says she takes burn victims.
Now,
And-
was she not the least bit suspicious as this guy's? And I know this is before Darkman, but Jesus, this guy shows up.
He's got the trench coat and hat, I assume, like Ben Grimm, the Thing, walking up, and he's just hiding in the shadows and stuff. And then
he's the little character from the Neighborhood Watch.
And then right when he comes up, like he cuts off the light, so that's your second, your second clue that something ain't right.
Look, maybe if she leaves the lights off during this whole scene, maybe this movie never happens.
Is that why he kills her though? Just because? Oh no, you saw me. Fuck you! And then,
well,
not her fault.
It's been 5 years.
It seems like you'd at least want to, get your rocks off, and then,
No.
No, all right.
No, it's just
Rock probably burned off. So
True.
that's true. Yeah.
True. He might have been a wiener on the grill too long or something.
That's why his arm looked. His arm looked like grilled up hot dogs.
That's probably how they achieved the effect. $1.5 million budget. All they can come up with is some burnt ballparks and make it look like arms. Oh, and then
that's probably why he was in there for 5 years. Like 4 of those years were them trying to like do something with his junk down there, and they couldn't finally like fuck it, we can't do anything.
Well, shit. All right. Well, we're gonna let you go now, and that's why he's pissed. He's just sexually frustrated. That's really what this is about.
Maybe the name of this should have been The Yearning.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to refresh. For your convenience, we have an attractive refreshment stand with a parade of items to tempt your taste. Hot buttered popcorn, golden good and fresh from the popper. Your favorite candies, wholesome and rich and full of flavor. Ice cream and other good things to eat. Plus, ice cold Coca-Cola. So bright, so bracing, with a taste and tingle all its own.
Right there at that scene when he kills the hooker, and all of a sudden a thunderstorm breaks out.
I noticed that too.
Did you notice that it looked like they used the thunderstorm from Dracula from 1932 or whatever the fuck?
Yeah, like a little sepia tone lightning.
Yeah, the old.
It's like, damn.
Just put in some stock footage. But we've got $1.5 million. I said stock footage.
Also, well, later on in the movie, talking about stock footage, did you hear the Halloween owl, hooting and hollering in the woods?
That happens a lot, though, right? They use that in multiple movies, didn't they?
Yeah, that I can't even. It's on the Halloween records too, like those old like the Disney Halloween records or Haunted House records, and so many like. That's probably where they took it from, just one of those old school sound cue records or whatever.
That kind of thing is not unusual. Like I think I've heard before that the laugh track that you hear in sitcoms today was like actually recorded for I Love Lucy, and then just use the same laugh track over and over again to this day.
Yeah, but that Halloween owl just gets me every time. Like that is the most obvious.
Yeah,
because I've heard it. I don't know if it's me. I've heard that thing 1,000 times.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Well, that's how you establish that you're in the woods and it's a camp and everything. You need the hoot owl.
You need the hoot.
It's like the Star Wars screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You get the campfire story of Cropsey. Now that was done pretty well, though, right? Like kind of his origin story, although it's kind of not quite what we as the viewer know is correct, right? It's kind of a slightly different version of it that, that they played this prank and then like, fuck this guy, and then just ran away. Like they kind of skirt past that a little bit, but I thought that was done pretty well because then they play that again at the very end, right? Now it's a different set of campers.
Oh yeah.
So that I think that's a pretty good round, coming back around kind of thing. Like here's the campfire story, pretty good effective little campfire scare kind of thing, and then it comes back around at the end. So I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with that Cropsey legend, right? That is something that would have been passed around from campfire to campfire.
Yeah. And that also in that legend too, there's although did they mention this? They didn't mention this in the movie or anything. That he was, of course, no. He was a camp janitor or whatever. But I know some of the original Cropsey folklore was that he was an escape from maybe not even necessarily an escape, but like that a mental institute shut down and they were releasing their patients because onto the streets, the ones that were supposedly not that bad, you know, and that he was one of the mental patients that had been released, made his way into, I guess,
into
rural
the
areas of New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Or at least into the folklore rural areas of New York.
So in my notes, I noted that other than the random hooker kill, right at the toward the beginning there, it was 48 minutes into the movie before he killed again, which I guess is pretty good considering they did an all right job considering it's a pretty big cast of kids at the camp and counselors and stuff like that of giving you some sense of caring about some of these, right? Like some of them are like, yeah, that dude's an ass, that dude's an ass, but they do a pretty good job of developing the characters here enough to where you care whether they live or die,
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the there being a fair amount of creepers in this movie, but you've got Eddie and Glazer who are both kind of rapey.
Yep.
And you've got
not
Alfred.
kind of very rapey.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you got Alfred who's a peeper.
Yeah. So, yeah. Although all that stuff's not really fleshed out too much, right? Like Alfred's storyline is kind of like, it seems like there was something there that they wanted to go for, but they never quite got there with it. Like, maybe there's some reason he's kind of a creeper, but is what I kind of gather, but then they never really pay it off. You're like, no, he's just a fucking idiot. That's really all it is.
Like to me, that almost felt like maybe they were trying to do the bait and switch. Like maybe Banksy wasn't really out there.
You
and it was,
mean
this kid.
Cropsey?
Banksy. Yeah, Cropsey.
Yeah. Banksy's out there. Watch out! And he's just spray painting a tree.
Just a girl with a balloon. I don't know. It was weird because you knew that Cropsey was out there the whole time. Yeah. Like that one character was almost like maybe in an original draft. Maybe they were trying to give you the thought that maybe he was the guy.
Yeah.
Was doing all this just because he's so odd throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But it never really turns into anything.
No, and
maybe they just forgot it and left it in.
There's no real explanation for his odd behavior, like really at all. Even when so Todd, Alfred is the creepy kid, and Todd is kind of like the guy that's kind of watching out for him too. Alfred gets attacked, and then Todd comes out to save him, but Cropsey doesn't kill him. And you're kind of wondering, like, well, why the fuck wouldn't he kill him? But then you come to find out later on, toward the end of the movie, it was because Todd was one of the kids that actually burned Cropsey. But Alfred, Todd comes in like, I to save him. Alfred basically just hauls ass and runs away. Then Cropsey ends up capturing him and kind of leading him as bait for Todd to come along. But Alfred, before that happens, Alfred's out in the woods, like yelling out Todd's name. But wouldn't at that moment Alfred assume that Todd is dead because he's just like, fuck, like Cropsey slashes him with the head and then just runs. And then, but meanwhile, he's done run like half a mile away or whatever, fuck out in the woods. And he's like, Todd, where are you? Even though you would just assume that Cropsey would have fucking finished his ass right there, right? But
maybe he was so traumatized that he just forgot. He just he's in denial about everything.
I guess
don't know.
One of the big scenes here that we should mention and point out here is the raft killing spree.
Oh.
I will say, although it's fine for what it is. It's almost like a physically impossible kind of thing too, in a way. You would think a guy that jumps on a raft, a poorly made raft, with 5 people on it, this thing would be rocking. At least 2 or 3 of them would probably just jump off and swim away. No, they all just stand there in a killing row, just letting him go to town. Like, hi, you, now you. The boat's not rocking. You would think at least most of these kids would have got away, right?
Yeah.
In theory.
But no.
The the whole physical aspect of him hiding in the wreck. I mean, because it's not like they're at the water level.
Yeah.
The eyesight's not at the water level. But they would have seen something. I mean, if he was covered up with a tarp, give you one thing, whatever, okay. But I mean, they would have seen somebody hunched down, like about to pop up.
Yeah, in a small canoe.
We're seeing it. Yeah.
And he's able to just spring up like, "Gotcha, motherfucker!" and then stabs and kills 5 people without the boat rocking.
Yeah. 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 So yes, an excellent splatter scene, but not a very convincing.
No. It's
display of physics or whatever.
No, it's cool for what it is, but yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Then you come to that final scene, the final fight with Cropsy. Why was there fucking laser sounds going on? Did you know?
I heard that.
Hi, ping, dong, ping, dong, ping, ding, dong. It sounds like all of a sudden Star Wars broke out.
Yeah, I heard that. I thought it was just like part of the score.
Happy with the synthesizer or something.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's weird.
I did also see like this whole scene wasn't supposed to take place where it happened. It was supposed to be in like a cave, and apparently after surveying the cave, like within like days, the cave collapsed.
Damn.
Yeah. So apparently it was supposed to take place in a different spot, and that just didn't work out.
Yeah, I think where they randomly found that place that they ended up doing it at, right? It was like an old abandoned mine or something like that. That final scene, it was some abandoned place that I guess they just, hey, this will work, and then they just did it there. But Cropsy takes an axe to the face, and then they light him on fire, and then for a split second there, I thought he was still alive. Like I thought he was.
Oh, he did get up and start moving.
No. I thought so too. That was a flashback to them burning Cropsy the first time.
Oh,
because actually, I'm like, what the fuck? He caught an axe to the face. How is he still moving around? I rewound it and I looked at it. Yeah, what they did there, it's just a weird cut. It's just a weird edit. Because it's like axe to the face, catch him on fire, and then there's a scene of him running around. Like, the movie Run when somebody's on fire. They're going, swinging their arms around. It's in every movie that somebody's on fire. They're doing the same movement. But that's just a flashback to when they burned him, 5 years ago or whatever. For some reason, they just spliced that in. And then you cut back and then I guess that's Savini's legs, just, him on fire, just standing there like, the end. But I guess, Smoke, we'll start with you. What did you think of the movie? What's your star rating?
Oh, man. I saw this, of course, first time back in the day, but it's not one that I saw a shitload of times back in the 80s. I probably saw it maybe 3 times back then. And since then, I've seen it, including this time for the show, another 3 times. I've probably seen this movie at least 6 times. And I always thought it was, as far as like slasher movies go, in the 80s, it stands above some of the other ones out there. It was so inundated with slasher movies during that time that it took something for one to really stand above some of the other ones. One thing is Tom Savini. It's got Tom Savini going for it, even though, like we said, it's not his best work overall. But that raft scene elevates it as far as we said, not for physics or for reality or anything.
Yeah.
For a sheer awesome splatter scene. Is really cool. I like the synth score, of course, but I love synth scores, so got that going for it. As a killer, Cropsy, it's got the folklore behind it. Kind of dropped the ball, not giving Savini enough time to really work on the effects for it. So he doesn't come across as iconic looking as Jason or, as good a burn makeup as Freddy or something like that, or as iconic a killer as Michael Myers. But just overall, I mean, I really think it stands above some of knockoff slasher movies of the 80s. I'd have to go with 3 3/4 stars.
All right, Will, what do you say?
I think I'm going to go with 3 1/4. A lot of good stuff in this. A lot of stuff that just never really got worked out, which we've already kind of mentioned. A lot of good effects. Definitely, people should watch this movie. I mean, it's definitely a good flick. It's just it didn't connect quite as well as some of the other camp slasher movies for me.
Donnie?
I'm actually going to echo Smoke for all the reasons he laid out. This is definitely one of the best, I guess, summer slashers. I'm also going to go 3 3/4.
Yeah, I think I'm going to land somewhere in the middle of all you guys and go 3.5. I mean, you're splitting hairs. It's a great one. It's one of the great summer camp slasher movies. It really is just an early 80s slasher. Period. You know, forget the summer camp part of it. It's one of the solid ones from the early '80s, the golden era of slasher films. Right, Smoke?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's up there. There was, I mean, as I said, there's so many of them out there that for one of them to stand head and shoulders above some of the other ones, it took a lot of right things coming together, I guess. And this movie has that.
All right, so with our star ratings out of the way, Donnie, I'll throw it to you first.
Connections from the crypt.
I was like to let it finish, but
let it breathe like a fine wine.
No, I was looking forward when you announced this one. Definitely looking forward to this. But so I looked high, I looked low. It wasn't really a whole lot to really locate on the cast side as far as connections to past Spookshow episodes, but made a couple of connections with Tom Savini, like we alluded to earlier. Connects back to our Creepshow episode, our Friday the 13th episode, as well as, and this may surprise some people, unless you listen to our, I believe it was our last Cannon Fodder episode, Invasion USA. He also did the effects there too. So yeah, Tom Savini.
All right, Will.
I came up with 10. You got the hooker stabbed in the stomach with the scissors, Karen with the garden shears, Fish with the garden shears, Barbara with the garden shears, Woodstock with the garden shears, Eddie with the garden shears, garden shears, Diane with the garden shears, Sally, Blazer with the garden shears, and then Cropsy burned to death.
That sounds about right. I was just trying to think of one that you might have left out there, but I think you got them all. So that naturally leads us to you, Smoke.
Gore score.
Oh yeah. So as we mentioned, this thing it's a little juicy one for the '80s. Yeah, obviously it was juicy enough in that rap scene to get on the UK's video nasties list. And also, as Will was pointing out, and you don't really think about it before you go in the movie, is that it's not a whole bunch of original kills as far as implements, tools, mainly garden shears and burning, I think, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, despite that, though, despite the fact that there aren't a bunch of different tools used for the killings and whatnot, still comes out as pretty gory and like as we said, our ratings are fairly high enough to elevate this thing above the average 80s slasher. So without all the various tools that somebody like Jason would, let's say, would use to murder his victims. But yeah, that raft scene as the ultimate as far as this movie goes, for the fingers getting lopped off, people getting stabbed in the throat with the gardening shears and slashed with the gardening shears. And really, though, that scene is to stand out as far as what elevates the gore score on this movie more than some of the average slasher films. Some of the other ones, the kills beyond this scene were, you had some more slashing and stabbing with the garden shears. And they were fairly gory, but I would say overall, I'm going to go with a split hairs here, whether it's going to be I think a 7 would be high enough for. I was thinking 7 or 8. I mean, damn, I don't know. It's high enough to get on the video nasties, but it's mainly for that everything's in that one raft scene as far as the gory bits of the movie.
Yeah.
Burn scenes they're not necessarily that gory. It's just, the aftermath of him being burned up. So I think it would be safe to say, I think I'll go with a 7. Just because of mainly that one scene in there where everything's, if it was all spread out and there was a lot more splatter scenes in more areas of the movie, I'll end up bumped it up to an 8. But I think 7 is safe to go with. And also, I'm not at home. I'm on location, so to speak. So I'm not at home to reference back to Chaz Balin, who is the father of the gore score, let's say, in his publications, he started the gore score. And usually I like to go back and reference what he said, and I'm fairly certain this movie would be in that Deep Red Horror Handbook that he would have given a gore score to, or the gore score book.
Well,
so,
maybe you can try
to amend that.
Yeah, maybe you can try to remember that whenever we do the 4th anniversary special in October, and you can add that little tidbit in when we're going through them.
Well, I'll reference back to that. I'm going to try and guesstimate, though, what I think I'm going with the 7 for myself, and I'm going to say that Balin probably gave it either a 7 or an 8 as well in there. I'm going to say, let's say he gave it an 8. We'll see if I'm right or not.
Yeah. Place your bets. Place your bets. But before we leave the burning, in the fire pit there, I'll mention the last couple things here. Our consensus score after, we all gave our star ratings there was 3.56. So as a group, we gave it 3.5 stars. So very justified. Now, as far as the regular aggregates are concerned, IMDb gives it 6.3 out of 10 stars. Metascore of 42. Now that's out of 100. Rotten Tomatoes on the tomato meter, 80%. And the audience score is 60%. So very high marks over on Rotten Tomatoes. All right, so coming up next, well, first off, next week, before Donnie makes his announcement, we're going to have our next Spookshow Spotlight episode 114. We're going to be talking about the careers of Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. That's the writer and the director of the original Friday the 13th film. And we're also going to be going into, we're not going to take a super deep dive on it because that could probably be a 5-hour long episode. But we're going to be talking about the drama, the legal drama between the two, and that involving the Friday the 13th series and the character of Jason and all of that mess. So we're going to take a little bit of a dive into that. And that's obviously something we've kept our eyes on over on Deadline Horror News a little bit when there's been any kind of news. But I haven't seen anything new recently. So we'll dive into that and kind of maybe, for those that don't understand everything, kind of try to explain it as simply as we can, what's going on there and why there hasn't been any new Friday the 13th films, new Jason films, whatever, in the last handful of years. So that'll be next week. But then the week after that is episode 115, and that's actually going to be on July 4th. And Donnie, it's your choice in the rotation, and it's going to be a new movie. Now, the criteria is horror movie, obviously, but it has to be a newer one. And a newer one for us means 2000 to present. And, of course, we're still in the middle of Camp Spookshow. So all that laid on the table. What are you bringing?
Oh, man. You know what? And I don't think I was listening when you guys were talking about doing Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. I think I completely checked out there in my mental state or whatever, because I was not listening. But we were talking about this off air, I believe. But I had mentioned just a couple of weeks ago, and I think I'd said, yeah, this is a first for the show. I don't think we've ever done this type of movie that I've actually chosen. But
okay.
We're gonna watch Never Hike Alone, which is a Friday the 13th fan film. We've never done a fan film. We've never done a Kickstarter or crowdfunding, picture. So yeah, it should be interesting, and that just so happens to be right after the episode for.
Well, it all fits together and it all makes sense
Yeah.
because of Camp Spook Show. All these, that topic lends itself to it. So, yeah, perfect synergy by accident. Once again, we're the masters of that kind of shit. Just accidentally tripping onto something that actually makes sense. So, yeah, that sounds like that's one, because I think there's I'm sure there's probably more than a handful of like fan films. But I think there's been some good ones recently, like, over the last decade or so that I've heard, have actually been done pretty well for, basically for some dudes doing it themselves in the woods. So yeah, that's one I've heard of, and at least 2 others that I've heard of that were done pretty well. So yeah, now I finally have an excuse to sit down and watch it. So yeah, that's a good pull.
Oh.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be good. We'll see.
Yeah. So like we said, over on Patreon, we've got Crapsterpiece Theater, Ernest Goes to Camp. Ugh, that should be coming out. That should be coming out this Friday, June 24th, over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/AASpookshow if you want to listen to us talk about that. Now, granted, it's way more fun listening to us talk about that movie than sitting down and watching the movie. So just keep that in mind. I'm not even going to recommend. Maybe if you've never seen it before, maybe you should go see it. But other than that, if you've seen it before, don't watch it again. Just come listen to us talk about it. And that's,
or you could skip watching it and just come listen to us talk about it.
Yeah, altogether. Yeah. Yeah. There's that too. That's an option as well. Either way, that's what's coming up next. And then of course our next Spook Show Spotlight is next week. So, I guess that's it, guys. So, for Donnie, the professor, Will, I'm Josh. We are the All American Spook Show podcast, and we will talk to you next week.
Oh, I got this. Does this tree look familiar? Or that tree?
Have you just been wandering around in the circles out there this whole show?
Don't hike alone, right? Or something like that. Is that what we're talking about?
Never hike alone. Yeah, you really
Standing in this abandoned house with my nose in the corner.
You shouldn't be hiking
I thought Devil might be out here too. Probably.
You shouldn't be hiking in the middle of a podcast. That's really the lesson learned here, buddy.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
See you never.
Hopefully, I'll see y'all on the next episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, there we go. We'll send out updates over on the socials to let you know that smoke is okay.
It's now 9:30, and that's lights out time. 9:30, as you know. Tomorrow is Parents' Day, and you must look rested or Morty will be sent to the state penitentiary.